we are going to brighten up our moods by discussing what, for many of us, I think was the best film of the year, possibly.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, possibly.
Front load it with that. Radu Jude, Do Not Expect the End of the World.
Do not expect
too much from
the end of the world.
Title purloined from some Polish poet.
George,
do you remember the name?
You saw this particularly recently for the second time. Could you give us a quick summary of this complex and interesting film?
Yeah, I can try and be as succinct. It's quite a complex structure. So it's bipartite, and anybody who saw his previous film so actually this film is the third, basically, in the loose trilogy that began with We Will Not Go Down in History. Do not think we will.
Do not mind. God, every title of a Radu Jude film is a long sentence.
It's unwieldy.
It's unwieldy. So the title of that film is I Do Not Care.
I Do Not Care if we go down in history
as barbarians, which was what a politician once said after doing something rather barbaric.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And then this was followed by Bad Luck Banging or Loony Porn, another
very popular title,
unwieldy one.
His lockdown film.
Yeah, and this is the third one. And loosely, thematically, and formally clustered together. I mean, especially compared to his other films, which involve this period drama aphorism.
They deal with contentious political issues in a sort of polyform fashion.
Yeah, and also, as I was remarking on the tube on the way here, and they're kind of city symphonies to kind of paeans to Bucharest itself as this like chaotic, rambunctious.
He's not necessarily
interested. Space.
He's interested in these places of excessive interconnection, overlap, and which is predominantly urban space,
right?
And urban structures, urban institutions.
So this is the end. This is a kind of capstone to this trilogy, and like the others, it's composed of these formally distinct parts. And the first part of the film is essentially
a road movie.
It's a road movie, and you're going into the hidden abode of production for the second part of the film. So the whole film is essentially an exercise in showing you how a propaganda film is made, and it's a meditation on the status of how an idea is kind of compromised and diluted by, in one case, political totalitarian oversight, which is a Ceausescu propaganda film.
Just to put us in the mind of the viewer.
Yes,
we follow in black and white footage. We follow a woman. A very stressed, underslept woman driving around Bucharest, driving around Romania.
She's a production manager.
Trying to find people who have had workplace injuries, who would be prepared to talk about their workplace injuries in a film which promotes health and safety. And she gradually finds that many of these people suffered their injuries as a result of negligence of the company she works
for,
rather than their own fault.
It's a classic structure. It's like Blues Brothers or something.
Yeah, so the difference here is obviously they're not generic workplace accidents. These are employees of a particular company that she's been hired by to produce a piece of
It's an Austrian furniture manufacturer.
Yeah, an Austrian furniture manufacturer, and she's basically been tasked with producing a piece of I suppose it's like a workplace video, so it's not designed for external kind of consumption. It's for other employees.
But it's sort of meant to cover their back in a certain kind of way. Yeah.
But in the process, discovers that it's corporate negligence that's led to that. Even though the official narrative is that they have wounded themselves, come to injure themselves through their own foolishness or drunkenness in one case, or accusations of drunkenness. So it's this, And
this woman is sort of harried and stressed, but also. She has a wicked spirit, and she is also a viral TikToker. She posts using a filter that makes her look like a sort of bald, bearded man.
Monobrowed, yeah.
The monobrow. She inhabits the character of Babita, which the actress continues to inhabit in the social media account of the film, which you can follow. I can't remember the at. Do not expect too much, or whatever. Yep. She posts these kind of misogynistic rants in the character of Babita.
It's a sort of Bakhtinian like Billingsgate. It's just like complete torrential obscenity and vulgarity of the most like exciting verbal
What's the one about
dexterity.
The Queen? So this takes place during the death of the Queen. The British Queen.
I mean everything that actually is happening around the production seeps into the production. I mean Godard's death is remarked upon, Ukraine war is remarked upon, but not with a kind of bid or a nod towards topicality. Just like the film is so ultra contemporary in both its.
It's this kind of it's a browser tab experience or a feed almost.
Like, exactly.
Not to be too sort of activistic, but
I just remembered another aspect of the film. The footage of her in the car is intercut with footage from a 1970s or 80s Romanian film
called Angela Moves On.
Starring
Ceausescu funded propaganda video about a sort of woman taxi driver in Bucharest in the 70s.
And actually, our production assistant is also called Angela.
Yes, and also the woman who plays Angela in that film then appears.
So you see, it's not so easy to give a succinct appraisal of this film.
It's a very faceted thing, and it's to invoke back to it's polyvocal in lots of ways. It really is in a truest sense, and I think. So we've got that narrative there, the second half of the film. So the film's kind of in parts, stages basically, as we kind of move towards the actual shooting of this. Her job is to kind of herd the cats of these sort of injured parties, to bring them together, to convince them to perform in the film, to then shoot them. In between that, we've got these kind of these derives, which are her TikTok videos. Sometimes we're inside the videos, sometimes we see her shooting them, and it's quite funny to see.
And it should be said that we go from this amazing high grain black and white.
I think she's on 16, or it looks like it.
And she's
quite grainy, isn't it? It's nice.
Yeah, and I mean, you remarked before on a kind of like thoughtlessly made 16mm film that you'd seen.
By Ben Hecking.
Exactly. Whereas this was it was done in order to exploit the mediums to its fullest. I mean, she wears this mirrored dress as well, which
this shine,
which creates this kind of wonderful mirror ball fish skin effect.
And you don't realize it's kind of this lost effect in a way. I think there's a kind of visual joke there, because when we see her in black and white, it's only when we see her in color that we realize this dress is this kind of like an oil slick of shimmering shades. But we see her in the car, and it's just
club soda
quite hard to tell. But I think there's also another narrative there, talking about transit, speed and death and velocity. It's got this kind of Virilio edge to it, which is that there's a bit where we see she remarks casually
it's so good.
She said this is one of the most dangerous roads in Europe, while she's driving a character we'll talk about in a moment, Nina Hoss's character from the airport. She says this is the most dangerous road in Europe. I think she says 3,000 people will die here every year or something in road accidents. It's not that many, but it's quite a lot. And then we get this film where, I guess a structural film where Radu Jude just shoots the tombstones, these kind of roadside memorials.
They're sort of memorials in just a cross.
And it's basically...
And they're very different kinds of crosses that would denote
different interpretations of...
Or different class positions of the families who...
Some of them is like a rusty little cross. Some of them are like a proper photograph with a bit of marble.
But each one is about 4 seconds. And it is... I think it's very much a cute nod to like Greenaway's Vertical Features remake. I mean, that's what...
Who minds if it is or it isn't?
No, I think it very much is. Like the way it's staged and mannered and all the rest of it. But also, I thought this was so audacious, seeing this on the second time as well, because...
it departs and then just returns.
Yeah, it's amazing. It comes back.
And it's just intuitive. It's like a series of thoughts. And it is, like you say, like a browser, not in a kind of crude, obvious way, but it does have this like browser tab way of moving between different forms and ideas.
And it's not doing the literal thing of something like Camille Onrose, which I like, but there's like gross fatigue, this...
Where all the windows...
pioneered the mode.
That's what I mean, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, and I think there's something about... it kind of follows the distracted... always on thread of thought, I think, in some ways. So, it's natural that if someone mentions this, it's almost like the brain would look it up and then browse through photographs on a browser or something. This kind of follows this kind of quite organic river approach to thought in terms of how the film is structured. It doesn't feel like it makes sense, but it makes sense in terms of just...
But there is a total clarity of purpose.
And it adds a weight to the themes of the film, because it invokes, like, we're talking about workplace tragedy, we're talking about accidents, it kind of slots in without being too heavy-handed. I mean, this is a film that has, like, it's full of contradictions, it's full of, like, quite sort of aggressive... I suppose it's encapsulated perfectly by these... people are calling them Andrew Tate style TikToks, because she mentions Andrew Tate at one point. But the way that she uses this problematic misogynist TikTok personality almost as a way to kind of speak her anger and her frustration in this situation where she constantly has, as a production assistant, she constantly has to be amenable to everyone and polite. There's this amazing scene with Nina Hoss character. Nina Hoss doing an extraordinary job in this cameo as a very icy kind of senior executive at this company who's being driven around by the central character. and who says, "Oh, you know, it makes this performative attempt to kind of glean a bit of information about the protagonist's life as a worker." And you know, she confides these like various things about how difficult it is to do her job, and then says, "Oh, but I'm on this job. You don't have to work those kinds of hours.
Just 8 hours on this job.
This job is fine. You know, and
which we know to be untrue.
So there's various moments at which she always has to be amenable to everyone, and then she has this amazing sort of offshoot, out where this channel where she can kind of pour out her frustration in a different character that is like viewed as very anti-woke or whatever, very problematic. But then there's this like glorious naughty pleasure at seeing her inhabit this character. It was a very nice touch.
And I think that there's something very libidinally free for her to do this. And it's funny when we see her, she has a kind of short cig break or something on the shoot, and we see her in the background with the camera just yelling, and we hear it from a distance. So we see, you know, it's kind of become a trope of videos. It's kind of very Brad Trammell story recap, watching videos of people recording TikToks in the street, and it's quite alienating and quite peculiar. And he kind of inhabits that. So what he does is he inhabits this kind of modernity that as refracted through various positions of seeing, of encountering.
He also doesn't maintain
with a spectator in loads of different situations and from loads of different vantages.
Yeah, exactly. Angles, it's pointillist and like or even cubist in a way. But like the point is that he is genuinely. It's apparent that this is somebody who consumes digital media and understands.
He's not some wacky boomer.
Well, I mean, generationally speaking, he sort of is. But
Gen X, surely.
Yeah, okay, true. But he's he clearly understands
He's probably the same age as Eminem or something.
The power and like the force of like a banging TikTok. And you know, he's actually remarked in plenty of interviews upon, you know, at what point is there going to be a TikToking competition for various different things, you know, or like a TikTok compilation. But this like the critical distance that's kind of needed for a respectable filmmaker to regard all this with slight contempt. And we were talking about the moments that you see even incredible, intelligent films where it'll be like, oh, this is going viral.
Yeah.
And everybody has to, you know.
Any film set in the present sort of feels it has a weird obligation to acknowledge like virality of contemporary culture in this
without it being inhabited. And here it's actually inhabited because the content is generated. It's the sort of thing that would genuinely
because it's formal. Because it has a formal. It has a formal.
I think there's a way as well
enough.
that a lot of these art house more prestigious films don't know how to integrate that technology. They can't find a way to get a fingerhold on technology. And what Radu Jude does is finds interesting ways to use, I suppose, modern forms or hyper-modern forms of communication like TikTok and integrate them quite interestingly in Zoom calls and things like that. So there's two very amazing kind of Zoom calls in this film. There's one, she calls a guy who she's supposed to be interviewing for this film, and he's gone fishing. So they managed to get him on, you know, mobile phone or something. They call and she's doing, you know, she's got the laptop and she's watching it. And because it's shot in black and white and because it's quite low fidelity, it's quite low definition, he's got a kind of fake space background. So he's kind of this floating head in space, and because it's very, I suppose, defamiliarizing to see something we know so well shot in this kind of grainy black and white, and it's an incredible way to, and we still have little bits of the tooltips in the screen, but it has this amazing kind of auratic quality about it. It's like you're seeing it for the first time. We also see this scene later where Nina Hoss is calling in from Austria before she flies to
against this glass panel.
We've got this huge head above this table, so it's very like, it's almost like kind of Wizard of Oz in a way. And she's kind of this Wizard of Oz character floating above this table, again in stark black and white, again very unsettling and defamiliarizing.
And a beautiful moment where the CEO of the company is scheduled to join the Zoom call. He joins it. He doesn't even say hello to anyone. He just says one word, emotion, and then like closes off the Zoom and leaves.
The complete like asinine like nature of modern
really,
capital.
I think it does nail like the neoliberal hell we're living through in a particular way that that a lot of films try to and don't achieve. I think it with a sense of fun and joy.
Right, because it's genuinely a dialectical film, I think. Like in everything, in terms of the attitude of like, you know, he's a Romanian filmmaker reflecting in part on the kind of like post-communist condition of like hyper nightmarish urbanism, that everybody's talking about the traffic, the working conditions are disastrous, and in some ways then the propaganda film of Angela Moves On becomes this like you know, it's actually kind of halcyon moment of
it remains a propaganda film.
It remains a propaganda film, but we are also, by the status of the kind of contemporary film, seduced into finding this like calm.
It's very meditative, and there's no traffic.
Right. And especially because the way he plays with the footage and slows it down. But then, you know, as a counterpoint to this, the kind of like dialectical edge of this moment is that he zooms in on the various people in the backdrop who are bystanders by and large, they're extras, and I think it's quite subtle what he's doing with the footage here. I think he's kind of like to pass out from this official propaganda film the moments that it can't quite conceal, the suffering, the trauma, all the rest of it.
Yeah, or just even real life, you know, because those scenes might be just someone with a bag of shopping with their mouth slightly ajar.
Who's to stumble into the frame,
So he kind of slows the footage down, and obviously the audio track also slows down. We get this kind of
sometimes the audio track cuts out completely. Yeah.
The other element I liked was, you know, this again. It had this kind of Godard weekend slapstick element to it, which was, you know, these sort of, they're not Deliveroo cyclists. They're like Volt or something, or whatever the company is in large parts.
He actually cameos himself as a Glovo driver in the lobby of the Deloitte building. He's in the back, and he gets stuck in the elevator.
So there's lots of moments that are quite, so, you know, again, it's one of these kind of symptomatic elements of modern capital. But
is that where they have the Fayum portrait on the wall?
And the Kenneth Goldsmith copy of Kenneth Goldsmith's Capital.
Very good. But so we have these intrusions.
That one was lost on the audience at BFI NFT 1, I'm afraid.
Everyone's applauding like a seal. I mean, but he has these. So we have these cyclists going over. She goes to a cemetery to go to visit her dad's grave.
Oh yes, and there's this thing about the plots of they want to build something on these graves.
Luxury housing.
So they're building an apartment condo adjacent, and so she goes to the Deloitte offices to kind of work this through, and they're like, well, they don't want to have a view over your grave, but we're going to rebury your grandmother, and we've checked, and it's all above board religiously.
Yeah, it's fine to do this. It's like, it's not okay with me that you're moving the mortal remains.
And she's only been buried 5 months ago or something.
It's amazing.
It has exhumed again. Yeah.
Not only in the editing style, but also just narratively, it's so collage-like.
It's truly like Rabelaisian, and like everything that is high is brought low. Right? Like basically, there is nothing that cannot be
Rabelaisian. This is your reference for.
This is Bakhtin.
This is okay. You have to explain it.
Here,
did you say this for Triangle of Sadness? It was Rabelaisian.
That was like attempting to be so. But then actually by having this moralistic third act.
So the book that listeners should read is
Rabelaisian as well by Bakhtin. I think so. I mean, at least to get a handle on this. But I think at the same time, and this is what I said when I reviewed it, everybody reaches for Godard, but actually I think he's truly the heir to like Kluger in terms of his understanding of hybridity and how to stitch together like multiple types of...
The Power of Emotion by Kluger springs to mind, I think.
This one, but also
Germany and Autumn,
I mean, if you count Germany and Autumn as a Kluger film, which we do, then I think
it's a Kluger project primarily, isn't it?
Yeah, but imagine if Kluger made comedies.
Yeah,
right.
Well, there is a huge element of comedy to Germany and Autumn.
Under the Big Top is kind of funny, but I think there's
Germany and Autumn is full of moments of satire. I mean, when they're debating how to like prefix the Antigone production, you know, that's a very Judean scene actually.
But anyway,
I'm sure he's seen that.
But my point was, you know, we've got this talking about Rabelais and kind of like inverting the high and the low. You know, you've got this cemetery, which is a kind of somber place of reflection and mourning, and we've got these cyclists, these kind of delivery cyclists crossing constantly, going through the cemetery for God knows what reason, and the cemetery itself has this
the website.
It's called cemetery.com on this massive wall, and it's playing quite schmaltzy funeral dirge music into the over the top of the cemetery.
And while she's there, she gets a kind of a cold call from an insurance agent as well.
Yeah, there's no space that is free from the clutches of kind of...
which also makes it a bit Fellini-esque, a bit like kind of German, like nobody has any space to think in this world. And in this world, these are I mean, you know, it's not...
he reproduces the modern world exactly by not trying to... He's not trying to reflect on the modern world. He's just created a diorama.
Well, or does he do what she says Babita is doing, which is to like intensify all of its existing, and she's like, you know, when she says, "I'm Charlie fucking Hebdo," like this, like. I
think it totally like just to reflect back on his career, and I did enjoy. So like structurally, this has similarities with I Do Not Care If We Go Down History as Barbarians, in that it leads up to a performance, to a project.
So it's the hidden about the production and the production itself.
And in the case of, it's quite short in Barbarians, the actual production, but in this, it's probably the last half hour of the film. It's just a single shot of them trying to film this video and the various obstacles, background, production chat that is extremely funny and weird.
And to try and get, because they're not quite happy with his narrative, because they're basically slicing away his account until it suits the corporate narrative. So they end up shooting and it goes from day to night. It begins to rain, so they have to get umbrellas out.
So there's like the moral and like practical kind of obstacles keep invading.
And the intent to have this kind of authentic story. As they realize it casts a bad light on the company, what we end up with is basically nothing. We end up with a kind of pointless him going
nothing, because he's holding signs that will be.
He's not allowed to talk, is he? And say, it's easy if you don't talk and you just hold up.
And
signs.
They say it's going to be like Subterranean Homesick Blues.
Because they eventually they have empty boards. He's like, we can just add it in post. We can just put the text over.
So then he can just be saying
he's lost complete control over his own narrative, which is perfect.
It's beautiful. It's like absurdist, but it hits just the right note of absurdity in it, and it's also nice to watch something so. Like it's almost like kind of like a breath of fresh air, weirdly, to have all this jumping around between spaces, and then suddenly then you're just like still locked off shot, same location.
Actually, the best joke is unless I've misremembered this, is at the end when they shoot at the site where he was paralyzed. So because a sort of old rusty road gate thing kind of fell on his head.
He didn't see. Yeah,
they didn't see, and they blame it on him because he wasn't wearing a helmet. But when they're there, the same bar is still there, hasn't been replaced. So they have to kind of lift it and move it out the way because they're like, oh shit, this is still.
And then he gestures towards the bar that isn't there anymore.
It's just so good, and there's these little, it's full of like little nested, I guess, Easter eggs in a way. But he's not doing it just. They're all part of this kind of the warp and weft of his critique.
If you watch, I mean, I'd like to see Bad Luck Banging again, but like Bad Luck Banging has in a way quite a satisfying discreteness in the sense of things being divided. Between the sections, but it's so much more exciting the way that this film like imbricates all the elements together. And I really have, when I saw it's just one beautiful when a director like makes good on their failings in a previous work. It just feels because there was so much potential in Bad Luck Banging, and there were moments of it that were really exciting, but yeah, it had a very rigid kind of 3-part structure, and everything was had even like an alphabet where everything was like separated out. And this film does away with that.
It was too schematic, and
completely does away with that, and follows its own intuitions editing wise, and that's what makes it formally really engaging, because it's following its own intuition about what should come next and what feels.
It's a termite film. Right. It's digging into the state of its own formal problems that it's presenting itself, and then it's finding ingenious ways to resolve them, and that's enough. That's sufficient to make something which is as good as a fucking great TikTok.
Yes. What can a film really be than a great TikTok?
Yeah. So we highly recommend.
It's got the return to form stamp of approval.
Return to form. Yeah. We love the new Radu Jude film. Do not expect too much of The End of the World.
But expect a lot from Radu Jude.
Expect a lot from the rest of his career. It seems like he has now really, really arrived as director. It will be distributed in the UK, which is great news. I can't remember who the distributor is actually, but it's very good. It's quite long, but it certainly earns
date night potential. Take your hinge date to go and see.
You will laugh.
Radu Jude. You can cry.
You will cry.
Yeah.